We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. So we've tried to sort out some technical issues this week. Things have moved around on my computer, so I'm facing a different direction. There's a fan going behind me because it got well, okay. I'm in Vancouver. I am definitely a Canadian. It got to 30 degrees Celsius, and I'm like, I'm melting.
That's hot.
I'm melting. I'm dying.
That's hot. I mean, it's not as hot as it is here. Like, I think it might be 30 degrees in my house right now. But hot 30 Celsius is not joking around.
I mean,
That's
it's still below 90 Fahrenheit, so it's not, it's not.
I think the hottest I've ever been in is like 36, maybe 34.
Yeah.
That was in Adelaide during a heat wave, and everybody was like the streets were empty. I think they all went to like the library, or where the AC is good.
It is too much at that point.
It is warm. Yes, we are recording at night this week because everybody's like, "Oh my God, was his Tom house again?" Yes, it was my stupid house again. But this time, okay. So this whole thing, if you guys remember, there was a leak in the bathroom.
Yes.
And I had to get the bathroom leak fixed because we were renovating a different bathroom.
Okay.
And I couldn't have two bathrooms out of commission at the same time.
Naturally.
So that second bathroom renovation, we've been pushing it back. It was supposed to start in May or April, around that time. It's gotten pushed back to mid-July, and it's like now or never the guy had to start. So they started yesterday, and what did it say? Wednesday? No, Tuesday.
Still Tuesday.
Yes, they started yesterday, and while they didn't run into any of the major problems that we've run into the other parts of the house, there was a lot. Like, everything was doubled. Like, there was drywall, and on top of drywall, they put a layer of like plasterboard or whatever.
Sure.
So it was double thickness.
Okay.
And then where the really old tiles were, it was like an inch of like concrete or cement or whatever.
Lovely.
The stuff. So my house is covered in dust, and but that bathroom is now gutted. But they thought they were going to be able to do that all on Monday, so I thought Tuesday would be fine. But then they couldn't get through it all, so they were jackhammering and sawzalling until 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock today.
Wow.
So, yeah, it was a bit of a thing, but now it should get quieter back there. But I would assume that next week we will also be recording at night, and the week after that, who knows?
We shall play it by ear, by hook or by crook. We're finding a way to keep this thing rolling.
You know what really irritates me is I cannot find the email from the Reaper people. So if you guys don't know, he talks about Audyssey. Audyssey is the free program that Rob uses to record himself, and I used to use it, but I was running into some issues on my Mac, so I switched over to Reaper.
Right.
Reaper is a program that you can evaluate forever if you so choose.
Right.
You do not have to ever pay for it, and after evaluating it for like a year, I was like, I better pay for this thing, so I paid for it, and I can't find my key, my product key.
Right.
So I emailed them, and they're like, "We don't know who you are." I'm like, "But I must have used the Tom at AVRant address. I must have." And they're like, "Well, we can't find it." I'm like, "Well, dang it." I still haven't transferred my email to this new computer, so I've got probably thousands.
Well, now that you're on Windows, you could run Audacity. I mean, it's been working okay for me, so.
I could, but I don't want to. I really like Reaper.
Yeah, fair enough.
I really do. But it has a lot more power than I'm utilizing, but sort of like those old guys who buy sports cars that like never drive it fast, but they just like that it can go fast. That's the way I feel about this program. It's a really nice program, but so this is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your question answered, all you have to do is email us at question@avrant.com. That is the best and certainly most reliable way to get your email or your question onto this podcast. There is dust all over this brand new computer, and I'm now angry.
You can really see it on those computers. Yeah, I recommended an Asus to you, and you can definitely see dust on them.
Yeah, metal body and everything. You can go to avrant.com, leave us a comment there, facebook.com/AVRant Podcast. We have a YouTube, it's youtube.com/AVRant, where you can see our videos of us recording. The only reason we're doing this is because we have to, because we're not in the same city, because if we were in the same city, I don't think we would be recording the video.
Well,
but since we have to do this anyways, we might as well.
We might be right now, because even if we were in the same city, we wouldn't be in the same room at the moment.
I don't know. I think you and I could quarantine. You actually have a lot more contact with the public than I do,
Yep.
so maybe I wouldn't want to quarantine with you, but I think I'd be safe.
I could
Well,
wear
I
my
could always work
respirator,
in
but
my
it
house.
might make talking into the microphone slightly muffled Banish, so...
Rob's in the building.
Yup.
If you want to contact us directly, Rob at avrant.com. His Twitter's at FirstReflect. I am Tom at avrant.com. My Twitter is at avrant_Tom. I want to thank our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, you just have to support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is going to avrant.com and click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link on the right side. You'll see a little coffee cup there. Mm-hmm. Click on that, and it'll send you to a PayPal donation site where you can give us money. So we want to thank Levi for transferring some of his hard-earned funds over to us for us to utilize and making it rain all over nothing. We don't really do that. I think I might buy a cable or something. I don't know. So thank you very much, Levi.
Yes, for sure. Levi, that PayPal donation is very much appreciated. Thank you.
We also want to thank our 125 patrons.
103? It's actually more than that.
I know. 100. I was going to sank, maybe. I don't know. Is that a thing?
No. I mean, that is 3.5.
There we go. I was close.
Whoa, that was some crazy clipping.
Oh, was it really?
Wow. It's only in the live thing. Don't worry. Your regular mic always sounds fine in the full recording.
Oh, yeah. I'm not clipping over here. There was like one little point that might
No,
clipped,
you're coming fine through, I think, your webcam mic on the Skype call, so...
Am I? No, I shouldn't be. I should be coming through.
I don't know.
Is that true?
Don't worry about it.
I'm going to change it.
While you're doing that, then I'll say that yes, we have 125 patrons over at patreon.com/AVRant Podcast if you'd like to sign up, including James W., who is also a member of our 2-Hour Plus Club. He listens all the way through every week, as well as Brandon and Rob. So if you are a Patreon supporter, by all means, just mention it if you'd like to hear your name on the podcast, because we are more than happy to say your name. So huge thank you to our 125 patrons at patreon.com/AVRant Podcast. And Tom is still squinting at his computer, so I will continue on.
Test. It's not clipping on my side.
No, your mic, your recording mic is always totally fine. It is whatever mic is coming through Skype is making the noises.
It's just default.
In any case, we also got some notes of gratitude once again from people who are thanking us for keeping the podcast going during our pandemic lockdowns. So James, Brandon, Levi, Tim, and Fred, we appreciate those messages of encouragement, and thank you to everyone for continuing to listen and sending in questions.
Yes, thank you, James, Brendan, Levi, Tim, and Fred, and our 125 patrons over at patreon.com, including James W., a 2+ hour member, and Brandon and Rob. But now that the people know that there is such a club, all they have to do is tell us that they do it. We should like put something at the end of like every once in a while in the video. We'll just add something there.
I don't know how to edit stuff into our credits.
Not a video. The audio. I'll do it on the audio.
Oh, okay.
On the audio. Yeah, it doesn't have to be on the video. On the audio, it'll be some weird thing, and you just email in that word that Tom puts in at some point. Maybe I'll put like a 2-hour silence after the end of the music.
Do you really listen to the whole file? 2 hours
Octagon.
of content, 2 hours of silence. Nice. I'm sure no one will fast forward.
You might miss it. Then you will know what the word is. You won't be part of the cool kids club. I guess we could do a Patreon. We could do like a level, right? The level things.
I don't know. Other people do it.
That's how they do it. I don't know. In the news, while almost every big movie that was originally scheduled to come out in summer of 2020 has now been pushed back to sometime in 2021, Warner Brothers and Christopher Nolan have announced that they can no longer wait. Because, we don't care about other people. We don't care. You guys, just shut up. Put your masks on or don't. We don't care. Go to the movies. Give us money. They've scheduled Tenet to come out in theaters starting August 26th. And if you think it's a palindrome on accident, you've probably lost your mind because this is Christopher Nolan, right?
Ah, yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it is not Tenant. It is Tenet. There's no
Tenet.
Whatever.
Yeah. I'm gonna. I don't say. Even when I know how to say things right, I can't say them right.
The number of people who pronounce it as Tenant is astronomical. Yeah. But that is not the name of the movie. It is Tenet.
It's a palindrome, right?
It is a palindrome. Yes.
Forwards and backwards.
That's correct.
So that was right off the top of the dome piece. I didn't have to think about that. So I was surprised because sometimes I forget how to say the word witch. I'm like, what word am I looking for here? Nothing. Forgot it. So it's going to come out in theaters starting August 26th at least in most countries other than the United States where everything's on fire. They do have an updated September 2nd anticipated release date for the United States. That's just so going to happen. But only in specific states that have deemed it safe to reopen movie theaters, and likely not in New York and certainly not in California or in Florida where 18 anesthesiologists just all came down with COVID from going to a party like 2 weeks ago. Like, you guys are supposed to be the smart ones. This is the creme de la creme of Florida right here, people. We're smart, so we can't get it. Let's all go to a party together. What could go wrong? And we're doctors, but
doctors never get sick.
They never get sick. It doesn't happen. They also never get cancer. Tenet. Its original July 17th release date has already been pushed back 2 weeks at a time, multiple times. So we'll see if this latest move really sticks. But the previous moves always included the U.S. Now it appears they are committed to opening where they can, when they can, and forgetting about a synchronized global launch date. All right, yeah. And Christopher Nolan will be in every theater saying, "Don't tell anybody. Don't post about it online. Don't spoil it." Let me tell you something there, Mr. Nolan. I have seen Memento like 5 times, and every time somebody said, "What's that movie about?" I'm like, "Well, it's So there's this guy, and he can't remember things, and then there's a girl, and there's like 2 of them are from the Matrix, so that's an important part of this because it's very distracting the entire time. And then,
and people say that it's told backwards, but that is inaccurate. It is not told backwards.
No. I can't believe that anything about this movie will be accurate. I have yet to have been able to adequately describe the plot of Memento to anyone ever, and I have very drunkenly just tried my best.
I could do it, but I don't want to spoil it because half the fun is trying to figure the darn thing out.
Yeah. I actually want to see it again. We've been talking about it here. Do you know if it's streaming on anything?
I haven't noticed it in particular, but I'm sure it is somewhere.
I haven't either. I actually want to see The Machinist again too, which is another. Is that was that Nolan as well, or is that just Nolan?
That was just Christian Bale rather.
Christian Bale, right? Okay. All right. So just announced today, CES 2021 will be entirely online only, which is going to make it real hard for all those dudes who try to get you to look at the VR porn thing. Those guys, not having the best day. The decision was finally made to allow companies time to prepare and to avoid making potential plans for in-person displays that might have to be canceled depending on how the pandemic plays out in Las Vegas by January. Back in early June, the CTA said they expected CES 2021 to go forward with just extra precautions in place. Dude, there's no way you're going to put the CES social distancing. It couldn't. The thing would have to be a month long,
right?
And you would have to. It's impossible.
Everything's scheduled and. Yeah.
It is. I'll tell you one thing that CES is really good at, making you realize as a male how awful it is to be a female in a theme park. Because the line for the bathroom is insane. And the line to the girls' room is just like, whew, and you can almost smell the flowers coming out of there. And the boys' bathroom smells like a mummy went in there and just said, "Yeah, this is my new home. I'm good." It's just awful.
Well, look, I mean, people already always joked about how everyone would come back from CES with a cold or flu.
Yeah.
That was before we had this novel coronavirus. So if there's any trace of the thing that still exists, there's going to be a whole bunch of people getting it if they held it in person. So this is absolutely the right call. If by some miracle we have completely cured this thing by January, it's not like there'll be enough time to change the plan. So this is the call that has to be made.
There's a whole lot of like union type stuff they have to deal with too, because with just scheduling these venues and getting things, it's not easy.
No.
It's not. If you think about doing a wedding, imagine that, but with union people and the union contracts and stuff. So just push everything back by a year. I'm surprised that this is they pushed it to the very last.
Well, they absolutely pushed it to. I mean, people were complaining. They're saying, "Hey, call this thing off. We're not coming anyway." So they finally made the decision.
I mean, the only way you could make that, I mean, even then it wouldn't be safe, but like when they did the off-site stuff at the different hotels, it's one room at a time. You could do scheduled meetings and stuff, but you'd never have, I mean, everything would fill up immediately and people would complain. So there's just not enough time. Breaking news, AMC Theaters and Universal Studios have forged a multi-year deal that will allow movies to be rented at home via premium video on demand just 17 days after premiering in completely empty theaters or theaters that are overseas. Theaters will exclusively show Universal movies for a minimum of 3 weekends, but after that, Universal has the option of offering its movies as premium online rentals, likely $20. Cheaper online rentals and purchases will still have to wait 90 days. AMC will share in the premium video on demand revenue. All of this comes after Universal stated they would start offering movies online day and date with theatrical releases after the success of doing so with Trolls World Tour, a movie that I am unlikely to ever see. After that statement, AMC said they would boycott all Universal Studio movies, so this is their compromise, I guess. They got in the room and said, listen, we got to do something.
Yeah.
And
I mean, honestly, I think for consumers, as home theater aficionados, this is a pretty good deal. Studios have for many years now been saying a large part of the budget of a movie is the marketing costs. And so if they can shrink the window between when it comes down to the theater and when it's available, at least in some form at home, they don't have to market the movie twice. They always used to have to do that. They had to wait at least 3 months for the home release of any kind, at which point they had to market it again to get it back into people's minds. So they're like, look, the majority of the money on new release movies is made in the first 2 weekends. The theaters still get that. In fact, they get 3 weekends. And then it comes home, but the theater gets some share. They didn't disclose what the percentage is, but gets some share of the revenue from that premium rental window that still exists for 90 days after it premieres in the theater. So to me, this is a pretty good deal. If you have a nice home theater, you're only waiting 3 weekends now. You can get it as a rental. You don't get to own it at that point. But if you were going to go out with a few friends or with the family to a movie theater anyway, $20, that's a deal.
Yeah. If you're going to buy your own soda and popcorn, you've already... It's great. I actually feeling bad for all the people that have crappy setups at home. Because after doing some Airbnb stuff and people are like, I don't want to watch it here. I want to go to the movie theater. I'm like, I would too. Yeah. This is terrible.
Well, if only there were a podcast that could help people set up really killer home theaters.
If only.
With value in mind.
And not only that, but a podcast that wouldn't try to upsell them something based on a name brand. Or some sort of a misguided idea of what is the best. We should create something like this, Rob. That's $1 million idea, right?
And if you know of one, you should let other people know about it.
You should tell them,
dear listener.
I'm so irritated. So a friend of mine, I gave him my Ascend towers for his new house.
Aperion towers, maybe you mean?
Yeah, Aperion. What did I say?
You said Ascend, which is what I have.
Whatever.
But you had Aperion.
Aperion towers. I gave it to him,
nice.
And he hooked them up, and he's like, "I'm getting this weird scratch." Oh, it's the speaker wire. Well, it doesn't happen all. It's the speaker wire. No, but I did that. It's the speaker wire. It's like, okay, so what about once a week we'll go over to their house, and they have this. we call it a backyard, except it's in the front yard. It's the side of their house. They're a corner lot, so the side of their house is fenced in, but it's like a clear fence. It's just like metal half height fence, and they have a big porch out there. So we come and we bring our own chairs and bring our own cooler, and we sit like 10 feet away from them, and outside get eaten alive by bugs and sweating like crazy. It's miserable. But so I'm sitting there, I'm looking at his speakers. I could see where he's pulled it out. He's pulled one out because I could see inside of his through the sliding glass door into his living room. I can see where he's pulled it out. I'm like, did you rewire those speakers yet? No. I'm like, okay, well, whenever you get around to it, just let me know how it works out. Okay. A week later, I'm like, the speaker's in the same spot. He goes, yep. So have you rewired them yet? Nope. Okay. This has been going on for since the beginning, almost the beginning of this thing. And so this last week, I threw a mask on, and I said, listen, get out of my way. I'm going in your house. I'm going to fix this damn thing. I can't look at that speaker anymore. He's like, it was working before, and it's just a little scratchy, so I don't know what was wrong. He had them wired to the surround back, left, and right channels.
Right.
Like, for whatever reason, he did.
Sure.
He says he was getting the sound out of them. I'm like, but how? So I fixed it, but boy, I'm like, it's such an easy fix. It's just redo the wires and you'll be fine. But I'll just watch it on the TV. I just listen to TV speakers. I'm like, you're not my friend. I don't even like you. Why am I here? Some comments here from some of our dear listeners. Adam wrote in to ask about connecting both a flat panel and the Epson 5040 UB to his Denon 3600H in the setup where his projection screen rolls down in front of his flat panels, so he never uses them at the same time. He did so just as we were going over Brandon's reminder last week that you can use a Harmony remote to easily select whether the receiver is outputting video via HDMI Output 1, 2, or both. So good timing. Adam made the appropriate changes to all of his Harmony activities and now is working perfectly. So good like that. Good.
Yes, that's good kismet. That's good serendipity there.
That's why we keep answering all the same questions over and over again, because you didn't necessarily hear the time we answered it before.
That's right.
Patrick heard me mention last week that I might be painting my theater gray. Patrick and his wife painted their living room using Sherwin-Williams Online shade of gray from the neutral 7070 series that Rob has recommended a number of times. It's one tick darker than the gray screen shade that Rob said to look up. They love it, so Patrick can vouch for that choice. It's so cute that you think I have any choice in this moment. I'm gonna go get some paint samples and I'm painting on the wall, and my wife's gonna say that one, and that's the one I'm gonna paint. So that's it. But that will be one of the ones I do. Thank you, cool. Patrick. Christian got a kick out of the recent Linus Tech Tips video on YouTube where they challenged LG, saying they would only promote LG's new $180 X Boom Go Bluetooth speaker if it was clearly better than something they could build themselves at about the same size and price. Christian thought it was a fun and good reminder there's a lot more to design a speaker than just putting drivers and some electronics in a DIY box, even when the guys making it had the advantage of already owning a 3D printer and professional CAD software. I have no idea what this guy is talking about. What is this?
Yeah, so it's a video where the guys over at Linus Tech Tips built their own Bluetooth speaker. It had to be fairly compact, about the same size as this LG X Boom Go, and it had to cost the same or less, at least in parts, to the $180 price point. And so they got...
But that's not fair.
They got some parts off of parts off of Parts Express and cobbled this thing together. And yes, the LG definitely still sounded better. And they said once they factored in the time they put into designing and making the thing, their speaker cost almost $1,000 if they were paying themselves minimum wage.
If you look at the cost of a speaker of this size, the actual cost of the parts and assembly and stuff like that, and there's still a lot of profit that's built into that. So if you went with the same actual just physical parts that they got and put it together, well, they're actually spending a lot less.
Yeah.
But then the research and stuff that went into it so that it would go in there, somehow on some level balances out because you're making a one-off. But
No, I mean, at the same time, though, if you're going to be a DIY person, it's not as though you're going to be able to get huge quantities and get that economies of scale that LG can. So I mean, it was just a fun promotion / experiment. And yes, the idea of even when you carefully design a box and put in off-the-shelf parts into it, there's still more to a speaker than just that.
Yeah.
That's all.
You mean you can't just put a speaker in a big box and call it good? Because that seems to be every audiophile speaker I ever see. It's like, it's a single driver with a folded horn in the inside of it.
Sometimes they go for the single driver design, because then you don't have to have a crossover, which is a
no crossover, full
thing.
range. That's right. I don't know how to do the electronics. I just like to make the boxes. Some questions here, Mike. Mike noticed that on the Blu-ray for Spider-Man Homecoming, after the copyright notices, when this movie starts playing, there's a loud pop that comes out of his speakers. It doesn't seem to matter how low his volume is set. Is that something wrong with his Sony S3700 Blu-ray player? Is there a way to eliminate that scary pop? There is something that we were watching recently that popped at the beginning of it too, and it did scare us. And then we watched it again, and it did it again, which made me think that it is on the disc and not out of my it's either. So the two things that can make pops like that, in my experience, are it's already on there, or there's something switching from something to something else that's making the thing happen.
It's typically that where where I've come across this most often is the copyright notices, the FBI warning, and that actually have a no audio track whatsoever. In some movies, the disc is authored with a silent PCM track, but in some movies, it's authored with no audio track whatsoever. And then when the movie comes in, of course, it's your Dolby True HD or DTS HD Master Audio or Atmos or DTS:X or whatever the decoder might be. But it's typically at that point when you went from no audio whatsoever to the decoder kicking in your AV receiver that you get this pop, at least in my anecdotal experience. Yeah. That's when I've come across this. There's not really much you could do other than if you were to set your Blu-ray player to decode the audio internally and just send out multi-channel PCM. But of course, if you're doing that, you won't get Atmos or DTS:X. For Atmos or DTS:X, you have to be sending out bitstream audio, and there's no way to avoid the pop if you're doing that. So if you only have a 5.1 or 7.1 speaker setup, and you don't care about Atmos or DTS:X, then you could set your Blu-ray player to just do the decoding itself and send out multi-channel PCM, and that should avoid it. But yeah, with a bitstream, there's not really anything you can do. It's how the disc was authored. I guess you could rip the disc and have only the movie as an MKV and put it all into a Plex server. That'd be the way to get around it. Then there's no transition from no audio track to new audio track.
Seems complicated, but okay. So we got the inexpensive triplet SPL meter from Parts Express that we've recommended in the past. Is it necessary to use the foam windscreen on the mic? So without ever having used this thing ever and not knowing, the thing I would look for in the manual or someplace else is whether or not, well, first of all, is it easily removable?
It is.
Because if it's not, then you shouldn't try to rip the thing off. But if it's calibrated using that thing on there, I mean, it should. It shouldn't change the readings that much. But normally the windscreen is to just do exactly what it says. It's just to block out that exterior noise from the wind whistling past it. And just get the sound that you want. It's for outside use.
That's right.
But I would guess, my guess would be, if it doesn't say in the manual that you should always keep it on, then I think when you're inside, you'd be perfectly fine to take it off.
Yeah, it's, I mean, this is a inexpensive handheld SPL meter that is sometimes used for things like just what's the ambient noise level outside or in a large restaurant or in a stadium or whatever like that. And in a situation where you could literally have wind going by, they provide the little windscreens that you take that noise out of getting into the microphone. But in an indoor setting, when you're using it to check the speaker levels in your home theater, you can take the little windscreen off.
Yeah. What does the button on the right side of the SPL meter do? It says max min.
Yes, it does. And so what that'll do
switches between the maximum cool setting and then the minimum cool setting. So the maximum cool settings like David Boreanaz in Buffy, and the minimum cool setting is Xander in
Ah.
Buffy. Also, it's all a Buffy thing. Don't worry. I've been watching Buffy with my
Can you tell?
14-year-old son. It might come up again. Who knows?
Yeah, so all it is let's say you're taking ambient noise readings in whatever setting, and you want to be able to hold on to the maximum peak SPL and the minimum SPL, so that because if you're looking at the display in real time, the number's going up and down. So you're not going to run into this problem so much when you're using it to calibrate your speaker levels. You don't need to use the max min button there. You kind of want to see the real-time number if you're doing that, so that as you change the trim level, you can see whether the decibel amount is going up or down. But yeah, this is for taking an ambient reading and just being able to, instead of seeing the numbers bouncing up and down as the ambient noise level changes, you can quickly see the maximum and minimum levels. So that's what that button is for.
All right. He should measure 75 dB C-weighted with SPL meter position in the same spot as the Audyssey position 1, right? About a foot behind his couch? What?
That is
a foot behind the couch?
That is what he wrote in his email, so that's what I put in there. So the being the same as Audyssey position number 1, that is true. That is the location at which you should get a 75 dB reading from all of your speakers with the SPL meter set to C-weighted. But I'm not sure. I don't know if that was a typo or just mistyped or something like that. But I mean, essentially, like what Audyssey says, this is. So they say the primary seat. We say it's not necessarily your primary seat because sometimes people's primary seat is off to the side. Audyssey microphone position number 1 should be equidistant from your front, left, and right speakers. Exactly where a phantom center should exist, and roughly where your head would be if you were sitting down in that position. Not everybody sits bang center in between their front, left, and right speakers, but that is where Audyssey mic position number 1 should be, and that is where the SPL meter should be taking its readings as well. So yeah, not a foot behind the couch. Right. What we've talked about, the foot thing comes in is we want 1 foot of free space all around the microphone. So you wouldn't want the microphone pushed right back against your headrest, because if we're saying, hey, it should go where your head would go, my head goes against the headrest, so I guess that's where the mic goes. No, you want a 1 foot bubble, a 1 foot radius bubble all around the microphone. So it might be a foot in front of the headrest.
Well, the only other thing I can think, other than the typo and just misunderstanding, is he might be going for the center of the room.
Sure.
And the center of the room might be a foot behind his couch.
Sure.
In which case, so no, you want it to be in your primary seat at 12 inches, like wherever you sit, 12 inches in front of your actual headrest.
Yeah.
Where your ears are. He has an Epson 2150 projector, and he found some picture settings over at reviews.com. Should he just plug in those settings and call it a day? I don't know. Did he actually link the actual settings? I mean,
well, I looked them up. So I'll say no. I will point you to a website called projectorreviews.com. So don't get it confused, because there is a reviews.com, but there is projectorreviews.com, where in their review for the 2150, they have their calibration settings. Provide a link for that over at avrant.com and in the show notes for this episode. But yeah, if you look up the review of the Epson 2150 at projectorreviews.com, follow their calibration guides, and that'll get you really close to where you need to be.
So there's one setting in the advanced menu that you couldn't find an explanation for, the HDMI Video Range. Should that be set to normal or extended? Boy, I think I just would switch between the two and see if it made a difference, because my guess would be it's either going to blow out the colors or it's going to do nothing.
Well, that would
be my guess.
This is what is typically labeled as your black level setting. Which is...
Oh, I was way off.
Yeah, so if you were sending, say, a computer signal that was coming out as RGB, then in that instance only, you would want to set it to extended, because if it's an RGB signal coming from a computer, it's using the full 0 to 255 range between black at 0 and white at 255. But for all video signals, it is the limited video range, which is between 16 and 235. For that, you would want this set to normal. So what they call the HDMI video range is your video black or RGB black, what's typically labeled as black level in most other displays. You're probably almost certainly going to want to set it to normal.
Yeah, we like normal. Infinite Gary. So, the new 2020 Denon and Marantz Receiver models let you store 2 completely different Audyssey calibrations, correct?
Yes.
Would that include being able to have one setup where he's using the receiver's built-in amplifiers and the second setup where he's using an external amplifier? Would that allow him to do an A-B comparison to find out if he can hear a difference between internal versus external amps, with Audyssey taking care of the level matching for him? No. I can't believe that that's the case. I would think that it's just the actual calibration part of it, not the amp settings and everything else. But Rob's going to tell
Well, I mean, what you would do is set up the configuration using just the internal amplifiers, run Audyssey that way, and that will set things so that with the master volume at 0 dB, you should be at full reference volume. It will set the trim levels appropriately. Then you would physically unplug the speakers from the receiver's binding posts and physically plug them into your external amplifiers binding posts, and set that. Well, let's see. You have the option of setting the new Denon and Marantz receivers to preamp only mode, where they have actually turned off their internal amplifiers entirely, and run Audyssey that way, and that can be stored as your second preset, your second Audyssey calibration, and you can switch between the two. Now, you can't do an instantaneous A/B because every time you switch, you have to physically move the speaker wires from the binding post. But, I mean, it certainly saves you time versus if you had to do an entire Audyssey calibration in between the comparison. But yeah,
but that's not what he wants. He wants to be able to A/B it.
Yeah, you can't instantly switch because you'd have to move the speaker wires.
It remembers these internally, right? You don't have to reload them in. That's the whole idea that you have. It switches pretty It switches pretty instantaneously between the two. That's nice, but yeah, there's unlikely to ever be a feature in the receiver that's so specific to what this Gary is asking for. It's just not something that people do that often.
Now, the other thing is,
and I just don't see it happening.
Even if you had, let's say, 2 identical sets of speakers, and you're thinking, I can just go from one set of these identical speakers is connected to the receiver's binding posts, and then I use the second configuration in preamp only mode, so that my second set of identical speakers is only connected to my external amp. Well, in the first scenario where you're using the receiver's built-in amps, both sets of speakers will be playing because the pre-outs are always hot. So there's no.
Well, I mean, I guess you could do it that way if you've manually turned.
You could manually turn off the external amplifier. Yeah,
that's how you would have to do it. You'd have to have a harmony setup a harmony control that would turn off that amp when you're on A,
sure,
and then turn on the amp when you're on B, and then change all the rest of the configuration.
But to do a near instantaneous A/B comparison, you'd have to have 2 identical sets of speakers. Because if you got one set of speakers and you're switching between internal amps and external amps, you have to physically move the speaker wires between the binding posts. But yeah, I mean, it certainly does save you time compared to the old setup where you could only store one Audyssey configuration.
So anything we are looking forward to in the next few years that we think will be a large and worthwhile improvement, either in commercial movie theaters or at home? He's assuming simply increasing the resolution to 8K, 16K, etc. won't be it. Yeah, I'm not excited about that.
No, I'm not excited about just more pixels. No.
It's very hard, I think, at this point for us to make any sort of predictions for the future when we don't know when we're going to be able to go outside and visit with other people safely. This is a chance, I think, for movie theaters to really reinvent themselves. And this is the time when, all those predictions I made, or those thought experiments I did where we were talking about how you could transform a theater into a VR experience and have a bunch of people in different VR seats. I mean, now it sounds ludicrous. It's like, I am not putting something that's been on somebody else's head on my head. That's just not a thing. Like, you don't have enough Lysol for that. It needs to come out of the box, and I need to take it out of that box. That sort of thing. But clearly, at some point, things will go back to some semblance of normal. Yes. I don't know when that's going to be, but it will happen. And when it does, this is what the movie theaters and other places like that should be looking towards. I still think VR, I mean, right now, my wife she bought the for she bought it for my youngest son, but she really bought it for her and us, was the Just Dance game for the Switch.
Sure.
It's like a dancing game or whatever. So we can't play it in here because my theater's too small, and if you stand up and dance, you can't see the screen because you're blocking
projector.
But we hooked it up to like we have another monitor that's hooked up to a retro gaming system in another room, and it's smaller. It doesn't sound as good, but who cares? You're just dancing, jumping around anyways. There's a part of me that wants to say, we should think about getting VR in this house and getting enough VR that we could do stuff together, play games together or whatever. I still think that there's something to that. I think ultimately that's where all of this entertainment's going to head towards. We're going to get closer and closer to VR. I don't know if we're going to get like matrixed in or, Google glasses or whatever, but it's going to be something along those lines. I don't really care much about 8K, 16K or whatever. I think resolution, like we've said when we talk about the micro LED displays or the micro whatever. Yeah. I think resolution is just going to, people are finally going to realize once you can't see the pixels, it doesn't matter how small they are past that point. So, we're going to see hopefully displays getting bigger and cheaper and, part of your wall or part of your glasses or part of your, VR headset or whatever, but I don't really think that resolution is going to be it. I also, I've heard people talk about speakers on the ground and more speakers. More speakers is not the answer either. I think better matrixing. I think Atmos and DTS:X is the right direction. I think that we'll be able to do more with headphones and getting better technology there. Who's the guy, the audio thing that was not, there was the really expensive headphone analyzer thingy that does, and then there was the program guy who got mad at us on YouTube one time
he did?
saying that for me saying whose head is it when he
the
did
out
his
of your
little
head software
transfer. That's it. I think we're going to see more stuff like that.
Well, I mean, we're already from like Apple announcing their spatial audio thing for the AirPods. That it's not just that they're mimicking head-related transfer function; it's that they're also doing head tracking, so that you have objects of audio that seem to stay, locked in position in real world space. So as you turn your head, they don't follow and stay inside your head. It sounds as though they're staying there. So I mean that is definitely coming. I mean it's already on the verge of being released widely in a system like that. As far as something that I think we'll see in the relatively near future, it is micro LED displays. We know those are coming, although everybody is facing challenges and delays. Samsung was hoping to have an actual product that they could offer to the luxury market, the luxury home market this year. That's been delayed. LG's efforts, LG released one micro LED display in a commercial movie theater, but that haven't really had a lot more movement since that. So it's coming, but I think we're a number of years away from that yet.
Yeah, you're either I'm getting bad internet or you're getting bad internet because something's happening here. I'm starting to lose you a little bit.
Yeah.
All right. Timothy asks, have either of us ever used a pre-pro or receiver that has Dirac in our own systems? If not, have we had the chance to hear some other system with Dirac? Well, fortunately for you, I have not. And not only that, I haven't heard it in anybody else's system either. Dirac, I stopped going to trade shows before Dirac was a thing, and I haven't had a chance to experience it in mine, mostly because it's only recently come into receivers and processors, and I haven't upgraded anything, and I hate upgrading. I'm okay with what I got. Thank you very much.
So I have not heard it in my home system, but I have heard it as a showroom demo on a NAD. It was actually a pre-pro, a NAD pre-pro. But as we'll get into as we're going on with the rest of the question, there's too many other variables for me to really say, okay, what part of this was Dirac versus what part of this was the room versus what part of this were the speakers and other associated equipment.
I fully anticipate, and I've been wrong before, and if I'm wrong here, if you took a receiver, processor, whatever, and changed nothing else in my system but that receiver or processor, and you put all the settings the same way I've kind of got them as far as how things are being decoded and what's decoding them and that sort of thing, and then you use Dirac instead of Audyssey, I fully expect that I would not have known that you had done that until I looked at the gear and went, "Hey, what's that?" So that's what I suspect. That's what I suspect. So he's been able to compare Audyssey versus Dirac, and after his experience, he thinks the audible difference is a bit surprising. Furthermore, there's no disagreement that if you acoustically treat your room and optimize the positioning and setup of your speakers, then any EQ program is going to be able to do a better job. But would we have to agree that there are a lot of people with less than optimal rooms, correct? Yeah. We deal with them all the time. And if a given room correction program really does offer better results in suboptimal rooms, that's a worthwhile thing, isn't it? I mean, yeah, but it's not magic fairy unicorn dust. I mean, it's not. I mean, I don't know. There's only so much it can do. So Timothy would like to hear a little more in-depth discussion and whether we think Dirac really can be worth it when considering a receiver or a pre-pro purchase. I think Dirac's worth considering. I think that Audyssey is worth considering, and I think that YPOW is worth considering, and I quite literally don't care which one of those things that you go for. I really care more about the fidelity as far as their filters and how low or high up mostly low down the frequency range that they address. If you're like, should I get Audyssey 2 EQ or should I get YPOW with RSC? I'm like, get the YPOW. Are you kidding me? Audyssey 2 EQ did like barely anything
in that particular version comparison. Sure.
Right. Yeah. And that's a version comparison there.
Yeah.
So I would think that it would be nigh impossible to do an A/B comparison between room corrections in a single room that is a bad room. It's the better the room, the easier it is to do the A/B comparison, because the less variance there is in inches. Like you just misalign the microphone by a few inches or maybe even less, and you can get some wildly different measurements. And people are like, "Oh, comment, you're making stuff up." No. Hold an SPL meter. Just hold an SPL meter if you have one, and put on a sweep or put on some white noise or pink noise or whatever test tone, and then just move it closer to you and farther away. And as you do that, you'll see the difference at the readings that you'll get. It'll change wildly, and just at that point, put it on a stand or something, and then move your hand like you're holding it, and then let go and take away and put your hand back on it, and you'll see the differences that you get. It's pretty wild, and it's pretty substantial, the kind of differences that you can get. So the less control you have over that, the less it is that the room correction is actually making the difference, and it's not just measurement and blind luck. So you're like, we have a terrible room. We tried all three systems and Dirac won. Well, somebody's got to win the rock paper scissors contest. Someone's got to do it, and then the Dirac won this time. But I bet if you did it again, it's equally as likely that one of the other ones would have won. So that's my in-depth. That's my more in-depth discussion.
I've got two sides of this, and I'll start on the one side. There is the issue of reductionism, which happens all the time in reviews and forums and just talking about any subject, but it certainly happens in home theater, where people will at worst, sometimes people will change multiple things and then attribute everything that they heard as a difference to only one thing that they changed. That's the worst possible scenario. But in a scenario where, say, the only thing you're changing is, let's not even say the AV receiver. Let's say you've got external amplification, so that stays the same. The only thing you're changing is a processor, and one processor has Audyssey Multi-Q XT32, and the other processor has Dirac, and you say, I compared them and I heard a difference, and I preferred the one that had Dirac, so I conclude that Dirac is superior. I could hear the difference and I preferred that one. That's a reductionist conclusion.
Yeah.
Because it's saying that, here is the most obvious a visible difference on the spec sheet between these two things. So that's what I'm going to attribute the difference to. But was that really responsible for everything that you heard as far as the difference goes? Was this a completely blind test where you didn't know which one was which? Because that can make a huge difference on your perception, even if you think that you're not biased in one direction or the other. Our perception of these things is hugely influenced if we know what we're hearing. But all of that aside, there's the other side of the argument, which is if you are someone who gets into Dirac, I mean, there's no way to set up Dirac without connecting the microphone to a computer and running through more involved software. There's no way to do it without, but that still doesn't necessitate you changing the default target curve. You can just run it as is. In the case of Audyssey, if you wanted to make any manual changes to what Audyssey is going to do, you would at the very least have to purchase the separate app and run the Audyssey program through the Audyssey Editor app. So if you're saying, well, let's compare default to default, now that's an instance where, first of all, Audyssey and Dirac have different default target curves. So if you happen to prefer the target curve of one over the other, you're going to prefer that default setting. And then you go into, well, let's say you're both slightly power users, so you're going to make some manual changes. You can make Audyssey and Dirac have the same target curve, at which point a lot does depend on your room. So if you have a well-treated room where both EQ programs can do a very good job and you've manually adjusted both target curves to be the same, they end up sounding really, really, really similar because both programs are only making changes before sound comes out of the speaker. Neither program can do anything after the sound waves leave the speaker cones. They can only change the electrical signal that's being sent to the speaker. So yeah, there's the one side that's saying, okay, let's just run it at default and I prefer one to the other. I got no beef with that. You know, I don't expect everybody to come listen to this podcast and get really involved, and I don't even expect them to purchase the separate Audyssey Editor app. Let's just run this thing at default, and if you prefer the default target curve of Dirac, I'm cool with that. I've got no problem with that. I happen to prefer having something along the lines of dynamic EQ because I think it's important that as I change my master volume knob, I have curves of equal loudness applied. Now, something like the Monoprice HTP1, they did their own curves of equal loudness. It's outside of Dirac, but they have that feature. So I would love to have that system. So yeah, it's a bit tricky. I can't agree, though, with the reductionist methodology of saying this is what I attribute the difference to, because I know that these are the two different things. Now, there's multiple variables going on here, and just saying this one is... That's like saying I drove a Ford and I drove a Toyota, and I preferred this Ford on this particular road, so Fords are just better. It's like, no, that's tremendously reductionist, and it's somewhat similar here.
Right. I mean, and if you just spend a couple of seconds thinking about it, if what your goal is to get the most accurate sound possible, there is actually an endpoint there. And if both things are trying to go towards that one endpoint, and both of them are very good at getting there, then how big of the differences would you expect? Now, if you're thinking that within a bad room, one could do it significantly better than the other, I posit, how? How could it possibly be so that before the sound leaves the speaker, such can be done to it that will affect how it bounces off the walls? You know, that's something that Yamaha tries to do with their multiple tweeters in their sound projectors in order to kind of steer sound around the room, but with just any old speakers, because that's what receivers and processors are hooked up to, just any, that literally could be any speaker. How could they possibly do something with Dirac or with Audyssey or with something else that would have that much of effect on what's going on in the room? I mean, it's not, like I said, it's not magic. No, I mean, it's the room. The room, it makes such a big difference that we always say it's the cherry on the top of the sundae. It's not the ice cream. The ice cream is, there's so much more going on down there. The cherry is just doing it's just there for looking good and making things taste just a little bit better.
No, I mean, the Dirac system, it is more sophisticated. They use separate gated responses with individual target curves for each of those gated responses. But at the very end of it all of the correction curves are summed into one, because that's what we do with waves, and that ultimate correction curve is a single correction curve that is applied to the signal that is being sent to the speaker. So would I expect objectively to, like if I'm taking the line level signal, let's forget about measuring what actually comes out of the speaker. If I take the line level signal, would I anticipate seeing slight variations between the correction that's been applied by Audyssey versus the correction that's been applied by Dirac, regardless of what I manually set the ultimate target curve to? I think I would, because it is doing these gated responses that Audyssey is not doing individual gated responses. It's looking at the total, the impulse plus the reflections as a summed wave and applying one target curve to that. Dirac is doing them individually, but resulting in one summed target curve. So yes, I do believe there would be objective differences in the line level signal. But again, once that comes out of the speaker, now it's up to your room.
Like I said, I think you could switch the whole thing out in here and I wouldn't be able to tell the difference. If you did everything that Rob said, going for the same target curves and everything, I would be unlikely to.
I think you actually would notice the difference between the default target curves, because if nothing else, Dirac targets a rise in the base and Audyssey doesn't. And I think you'll hear that.
Yeah. Probably would hear that. Raul lives in Mexico, and he was saving up last year for SVS PB1000. He runs a small business, and thankfully it's surviving. The pandemic has been rough. I'm sorry, sir. Best of luck to you.
Yes.
It's really hard times for a lot of people, and all of those who have jobs should be thankful. And I know that I am thankful that my wife is still working, because I am not. I have been unemployable for pretty much since March. On top of that, his mom needed expensive medical treatment. I'm also sorry about that. So best of luck to your mom, and I hope she's doing well. He's happy to report. I should just keep reading. He's happy to report she has fully recovered. So he couldn't care less about the money, but all of this has put his home theater plans on the back burner, which is perfectly reasonable.
More than understandable. My goodness.
That's what I would do too. It's still a hobby he enjoys, though, and it's nice distraction. So he'd still like to do something. It just needs to be less expensive. He was looking for a PB1000, which I don't know what that is in Mexico.
Right.
I don't know how much they sell for down there. So, okay. He was thinking that making some DIY acoustic panels might be the way to go, but for some reason where he lives, finding Rockwool isn't easy and it's overly expensive. So we'd like to know if there are other cheaper, readily available materials that will still perform as well as DIY absorption panels. Any suggestions? Well, so there's the Rockwool, but there's also the Owens Corning 703
is the typical one, which is a semi-rigid fiberglass. It's not the so there's the very quite solid rigid fiberglass that goes on like concrete foundations in basements that you can like literally nail stuff to. Not that. You don't want the one that's that hard. The Owens Corning 703 is softer than that, but firmer than just the pink stuff insulation. So therefore, if you just sit it into a DIY frame, it's not going to sag, similar to Rockwool. That's typically why we recommend Rockwool and Owens Corning 703 if you're going fiberglass, because they don't sag on their own. They'll just stay nicely with their shape inside of your DIY frame. But that said, you don't...
Usually, I mean, it depends on where you live, but Rockwool and Owens Corning, vary wildly in prices. In the States, they're kind of equivalent.
Yeah.
There's not a huge difference between them. But when I was in Australia...
Right.
Owens Corning was like insanely expensive, but there was Rockwool like at their Bunnings, I think is what it's called, their version of Home Depot. So maybe Owens Corning is something that's more readily available to you.
Possibly, but if not, performance-wise, there's nothing wrong with the pink stuff. I mean, there must be some kind of in-wall insulation that is available to you wherever you happen to be in Mexico. There's got to be some kind of insulation. Now, it's just whatever insulation you might have readily available and cheap might be the kind of stuff that on its own would just sag with gravity if you just stuck it into a frame that you made. But if you have sort of like you're certainly going to have an acoustically transparent fabric covering the front of the frame. And if you have some kind of webbing or muslin or something on the back that can hold the insulation in, that's fine.
I use cotton batting when it's not, it's not super strong, but it doesn't have to be. It's holding up like weighs nothing insulation.
You can also put in like a little bit of wood ribbing in some areas so that there's a little bit more structure for the insulation to sort of grab onto. And I mean, if you're doing it DIY, whatever you're with your frame.
You want, obviously you want to get the paperless stuff.
Yes.
You don't want there to be the paper stuff on the back of it. And this is going to be a lot harder to work with.
Sure.
So I would build the frames. I would wrap one side of the frames, probably in whatever the front material is going to be. I would, softly. You don't want to compact it too much when you're putting it in there. You want to put it in there, kind of, and then put a back on it. Just staple a back on it. And if it's just like literally like potato sacks, that muslin, very potato sack back, just to keep everything in and standing upright. I think that would be fine. I mean, it's not going to be as good, but it's going to certainly be better than what you got now, which is, I'm guessing, nothing. So, yeah, I'd go for that.
Yep, and literally any insulation you can get a hold of.
Yeah. Wesley, let us know how it goes. Man, I'm very interested in that. Wesley is looking to buy a new TV, not immediately, but by the end of the year. He's looking to keep the price below $1,500. Well, the longer you wait, the cheaper it's going to get. So, it's only July right now. Or August. I don't know when this is coming out. So, yes. He'll be sitting about 8 or 9 feet from the screen. In his room, it has one... I just double-clicked on accident. One big window that will be to the right of his TV. That window faces north, and he has plants, so he isn't going to black it out. I guess the plants are inside?
Yes.
So he doesn't want to black it out. Okay. He tends to have his TV on for up to 14 hours a day, and most of that is playing podcasts. So there tends to be a lot of static images. The logo for his podcast app is always present, and then a lot of podcasts have a static logo of their own. So he's concerned about burn if he were to opt for a 55-inch OLED. Plus, with his budget, he could potentially get a larger LCD. He is mildly concerned about his daytime viewing conditions, too. At the moment, he's mostly considering the new Vizio 55-inch OLED or the 65-inch TCL Q825 with its mini LED backlight system. What do we think would be the best choice for him? 14 hours a day listening to podcasts through his TV.
With static images. And 8 to 9 feet. Where I'm like...
Well, I'm going to say, just to start off with, you should turn your TV off. Turn the image itself off. I mean, surely there's a way to do this where there's no image coming out, so you don't have to risk burn-in. I don't think the 55-inch is nearly big enough.
Yeah.
I don't think that that's reasonable. I would go for the brightest, biggest LED or LCD screen I could get. 65 inches better. 9 feet. I would want 85 inches if I could find it someplace.
But you might be able to go 75. That's the in between that might be gettable. Now, so I suspect maybe this TCL 8 series that he has in mind is because David Katzenmeier over at CNET proclaimed it to be his favorite display that is not an OLED. In terms of overall value. He's like, for the value that you get. But David Katzenmeier tends to, so like over at Ratings, Rtings, they tend to value peak brightness more than anything else for some reason. That's like, if you get crazy bright, we almost don't care about anything else. And David Katzenmeier cares about contrast. He's like, if you got the best contrast, you're probably my favorite, as long as everything else isn't like egregiously bad. I have a few quibbles with the TCL 8 series for my own personal taste, because it doesn't track gamma accurately. There's some like too much darkening at the bottom, a little bit too much brightening at the top. I am going to recommend to you Vizio. I mean, you're already considering the Vizio OLED. We're saying OLED probably not the best choice. You would be limited to the 55-inch size. We want you to get a larger size than that at your viewing distance. The new either P Series or P Series Quantum X. Now, you could get the 65-inch P Series Quantum X that just came out. It has an H at the end of its model number if you want to make sure it's the 2021 version, because Vizio has proclaimed that these are their 2021 models since they'll carry into next year. But the Vizio P-Series Quantum X 65-inch, it gets every bit as bright as this TCL. It doesn't have mini LEDs, but it has like 384 local dimming zones in the P-Series Quantum X. And it's a really good-looking TV. On top of that, it has all of the HDMI 2.1 features with full 48 gigabits per second bandwidth and all the variable refresh rate and 4K at 120. So if you're a gamer at all, the Vizio has an advantage there. Now, if you're like, I'd rather have the bigger size of a 75-inch, the new 2021 Vizio P-Series, you could get the 75-inch for that. The list price is $1,700. So we've gone over the $1,500, but it's probably going to get down to $1,500 by the end of the year. Vizio always comes down in price. So you can get a 75-inch P-Series. It still has all the HDMI 2.1 features, but it has fewer local dimming zones. Now you're down into the, I think it's 128 local dimming zones or something along those lines. It might even be 192. It's half or whatever, but and doesn't get quite as bright. 1,200 nits instead of 3,000 nits with the P-Series Quantum X. But I say go with a Vizio, LCD, P-Series, or P Quantum X.
I would keep my eyes open for deals.
Sure, there's that too.
I would constantly, as I was walking out of wherever, I would look for what was on clearance. Best Buy, Sam's, Walmart, whatever the places, Costco, the place. Don't go to Costco. Apparently, that's where all the crazy people go. I don't know what's going on with that around here. There's a lot of Costco stories.
But I like the idea of being able to get a completely up-to-date, full HDMI 2.1, everything feature-rich, and within the price point you're looking for, at the size you're looking for. Checks all the boxes.
Keep your eyes open. James has sort of recommendation to label 4 overhead speakers as front heights and rear heights, even if they are physically positioned where Dolby would say to label them as top fronts and top rears. He knows we explained that's because of the way that DTS-X handles overhead speakers. He just wasn't 100% clear on why that was the case, and he'd appreciate if we could go over the explanation one more time and how we landed on that recommendation. I don't really think that it was our recommendation. Didn't we read that someplace and then brought it in? But just to be clear, before we really dive, and by we I mean Rob, because I'm almost out of water and I need some. I'm gonna go get some.
This will be enough for you to run out and get some.
Yeah, I know. That's why I figured I'd go ahead and do it. And now that my bathroom's back, yay! There's overlap in almost all of these speaker positionings, especially the overhead stuff. There's overlap. There's actually I don't know if there's really as much as there used to be, but there's now even some overlap in the side surrounds versus the where they used to say side surrounds would go and where they used to say the surround backs would go. There was places where they could almost be in the within inches of each other if you really kept straight to it. So with front heights and top fronts, there's enough of overlap that you can kind of cheat it one way or the other. And the fact that the way that DTS handles their overheads means that you can have the best of both worlds. And Rob's going to tell you why while I get some more.
Yeah, so the source of this, there's really two main sources because they combine to give the explanation of why the combination of front heights and rear heights works really nicely for both Dolby Atmos and DTS-X, and actually for Oro 3D as well, if you want to throw that in there. So the first one is Monoprice's manual for their HTP1 processor. They did the most concise and clear job of explaining how DTS-X steers the overhead sounds depending on the configuration and labels that you've given to your overhead speakers. So as they explain it, if you were to label 4 overhead speakers as top fronts and top rears, what DTS-X will do is send the sounds that would go into, say, your top rear speakers into both your top rear and surround back speakers, because it basically DTS-X wants you to have front heights and rear heights. If you have your speakers labeled as front heights and rear heights, and there are overhead sounds in DTS-X, it will put them discreetly into those speakers. It won't send some of the sound also into the surround backs or also into your front left and right speakers. So it's because we appreciate that discrete sound and not having the sound mixed into both the overhead speaker and the surround back or the front, if you're talking about the front heights, that we prefer to have them labeled as front height and rear height for DTS-X. Now you might say, well, what happens when I go over to Atmos? This is where the second write-up, which is over at High Def Digest by Josh Zyber, who's got this ridiculous and continually ongoing series of going beyond 7.1.4, using multiple receivers, multiple processors to do all kinds of crazy matrixing and stuff. But at the beginning, he explains how you can quite easily tell with the Dolby Atmos test tones that the overhead sounds are like separate from the floor level sounds in Dolby Atmos. Even if you only have two overhead speakers, no matter what they are, if you only have two, then all of the overhead sounds will come out of those two overhead speakers and only those two overhead speakers. It doesn't get mixed and panned into any of the floor level speakers. It's completely separate. So that means if you label your four overhead speakers as front heights and rear heights, when it comes to Dolby Atmos, those sounds will be discretely in your front height and rear height speakers. And then for Oro 3D, it's the only configuration that is compatible with that format and the other two. So by default, of course, that's what you're going to choose because it actually works. So it actually works out swimmingly well. It works for all three immersive audio formats, giving you discrete sound in your overhead speakers.
There you go. What he said. So what if you have top middles, 4 overhead speakers total, 2 some distance in front of you, and 2 directly overhead? Would we still recommend label them as front heights and rear heights, or should the speakers that are directly overhead be labeled as top middles now? And if they are, how does DTS-X handle that? They cannot be labeled top fronts and top middles.
It won't allow you to do that. Yeah.
So it has to be front heights and top middles, and yes, you should label them as such because that's what they are. I mean, you're not the president of the United States. You can't just say something is the way it is and people are going to believe you just because they do. If it's over your head, you have to say they're top middle.
So
I hate to get political, but that's my one political jab so far in 710 episodes of this podcast. I'm allowed one.
Sometimes we have a fellow named Lee Overstreet on here, and he doesn't mind getting political, so Tom is allowed.
Yeah, that's right.
But so what will happen? So let's do Dolby Atmos first. If you've labeled something as front heights and top middles, then it will position the sounds that are overhead as objects as best as it can using those 4 speakers. Dolby Atmos, really not a problem. What will happen, though, is let's say physically the speakers are some distance in front of you and directly overhead, but you label them as front heights and rear heights because you followed along the explanation from before. Dolby Atmos, when a sound is supposed to be directly above you, will now put the sound into both the front heights and the what you've labeled as rear heights because it's trying to make the sound come from in between them. So now sounds that should be directly overhead kind of sound like they're coming from in front of you a little bit, and sounds that are supposed to be behind you now come from directly overhead. So the steering isn't quite right when you do it that way with Dolby Atmos. In the case of DTS-X, if an object is discretely directly overhead and you've labeled your speakers as top middles and they're physically directly above you, that'll sound perfect in DTS-X. If a sound is mixed into where DTS-X would have you put rear heights, then it's basically going to play that sound out of your surround back speakers now with this configuration. So it's not going to try and put the sound into the top middles because they happen to be your rearmost overhead speakers, the way that Dolby Atmos kind of would. It's going to put them into your surround backs mostly. That's what DTS-X is going to do. And Oro 3D won't make use of top middles at all. So, if you're mostly worried about Atmos and DTS-X, I would go ahead and label them what is appropriate for where they're physically placed, because you want sounds that are meant to come from directly overhead to come from directly overhead. So labeling them as top middles will do that for you.
Yeah. Really, and I know that there is a technical discussion and reason why we recommend doing one thing versus the other, but I think if you labeled your speakers as top fronts and top rears instead of front heights and rear heights, I think that your objective experience or your subjective experience is not going to be something that is going to be like, you're like, this, everything is wrong with the world. How am I, why is everything so terrible in here? That's not what you're going to experience.
Realistically, how much DTS-X content is there actually? Because it's really only on Ultra HD Blu-rays. It's not on any streaming service. And most discs now are just going ahead with Dolby Atmos because Dolby's kind of winning this whole thing.
Yeah. Kind of walking away with it again. I hate to say again, but they kind of are. Chris is renting, so he cannot drill into walls or the ceiling in order to mount home theater equipment. You can if you learn how to. Well, maybe you can't. In America, okay, because I never would have guessed this, but in America, when you rent, they say, "Hey, have a good time in that place. We will see you when you leave." Okay, that's normal. No one ever goes into your house to see what you've done in there. But in Australia, it was like all the time, like monthly or, every couple of months or something like that. You would get an inspection and somebody would come in. And if they didn't like the way you were treating the place, they could kick you out. And so I don't know where Chris is renting from, so maybe he can't do this. But if you practice patching drywall, you could do whatever the heck you want as long as you can patch it good enough. But anyways, he's renting, so he cannot drill into walls or the ceiling in order to mount home theater equipment. There is an overhead support beam on the ceiling running front to back, straight down the middle of his setup. So he has used lumber with a combination of clamps and friction fitting with shims to mount his projector and screen. So that looks terrifying, but I'm sure it works.
Yeah,
so,
nothing is permanently attached. It is all removable, but the projector basically has a couple of... I don't know if they're 2x4s.
I will say, I'm not sure I trust those gun type clamps, where I've got them.
Yep.
I own them, and they are good, and they've never failed me, but I've never hung a $2,000 projector from my ceiling.
I think what I would maybe
before.
do is, in addition to the clamp, leave the clamp, but I would also maybe zip tie around the entire thing. So that if the clamp itself...
I don't even know. What are you going to zip tie to? That's going to keep
like a large zip tie that goes around the clamping... the two sides of the clamp, like it actually holds.
Okay,
the clamp
physically. Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know if that would. You'd have to get a serious zip tie.
Oh yeah, they got the big zip ties. It's totally doable.
So he's got up front. He's got two 2x4s that are. And sir, if you think that you haven't in some way damaged the ceiling by doing this, you have lost your mind. But he's got two 2x4s that are like wedged up from floor to ceiling, and his projector screen is mounted to that. On the ceiling, he's got it's really maybe there's another picture. Nope, there's not.
No.
It's got maybe a 4x that's somehow wedged between the floor and then there's two clamps.
I think it's probably like an L-shaped piece of wood that he's created, so he can clamp.
Right.
He can clamp the bottom. What would be the bottom of the L is up at the top against a beam, so he's clamped that to the beam, and then another vertical piece coming down to hold the whole thing up. To which that's what his projector is mounted to, so it's not plugged into any of the structure of the building itself.
Right. I think at this point they probably would have preferred a couple of small holes, but here we go. Now he's trying to figure out the best way to arrange some surround speakers. He is not opposed to using speaker stands, but his son also came up with the idea of attaching a horizontal board to the vertical piece of lumber he is using to hold up the projector. Either way, okay, so let's say, where's this chair? Okay, so this piece of wood that's holding up the projector is directly behind his couch.
That's right.
So what he's suggesting is that he could put a piece of wood like smack dab behind the middle seat. It looks like. So he could put a piece of wood going left, horizontal, left to right, out to the sides, and then attach the speakers to the end of this piece of wood, like some sort of inverted satanic cross with speakers on it. So, don't have religious parents if you're going to do this, but let's go, since we now have Satan's home theater. Have I been watching Lucifer on Netflix? Yes, I have.
Everything's related to what you've been watching.
Because it's about me, Rob. I've been watching Lucifer. Of course it's about me. Some of those came with the idea of attaching the horizontal board to the vertical piece of lumber, so using the whole bit's projector. Either way, his current speakers are too big and heavy. So what are some relatively small and light speakers that are worth considering for surround duty, and how do we think he should get them into position? I think you shouldn't give up just because they're too heavy. Nothing else has stood in your way so far.
I can't agree
no
with
nails
that
in the ceiling.
reality.
How do you feel about me exact cutting a 2x4 so that I can pressure wedge it into this thing and hang a screen from it? How do you feel about that, sweetheart? So this is what I think you should do, because I love this idea way too much to let you give up on it. So I think you should take a nice big piece of 2x or 4x or whatever the bottom of your inverted satanic cross is going to be. No, inverted satanic cross would be a regular cross. Inverted cross would be, and then I would put more lumber going straight to the ground on either side to support it, so that you now have stands. So you've got the stand goes. I mean, at this point, you should have just used. Used a speaker. This is too much fun. So we're gonna go across with the horizontal piece, then we back down to the ground, and then we're gonna put a platform on top.
So he's made a trident.
Put your speakers on there. You've made yes, but that's not as much fun as what I was saying. So and then. I'm sure this could get somehow worse, but paint it blood red. I don't know. This is fun. Let's do this. So, yeah, just get stands. Just get stands for your current speakers. That's the answer to your question.
In seriousness, yes, absolutely. Just get some speaker stands. I don't know what speakers like. If you already have tower speakers, then you could there's no problem having towers as surrounds. They already have stands incorporated. If you have large bookshelf speakers, which is I guess what I'm imagining, like you can still put large bookshelf speakers on stands. Like some Sanus stands, some of their steel series stands with.
That's what I've got.
Some museum putty, as Tom.
Oh, Rob, have you heard of this museum putty stuff? I have
heard of it. Isn't that crazy?
It's insane. Like, I could push my speaker. Look at the whole stand goes, Rob. Yep. It's just wobbling back and forth, Rob.
That's right.
It's just stuck there. It's like it has become as one.
That's how it is.
You should check them out.
They don't want things falling over in museums and getting taken off of stands easily. So, I mean, that'll hold just about anything. But let's just imagine that the speakers you have are just physically too large. No matter what we do, they're just going to be physically too large. I'm not worried about their weight. I'm not really worried about their size. Some Steel Series Santa stands and some museum putty will hold just about darn near anything. But let's say you just want some smaller speakers. I don't know what speakers you already own, but I have yet to come across very many speaker brands that do not offer a bookshelf speaker in their lineup. That is of a reasonable size. Maybe you don't. Maybe he's got JTR speakers, and they just don't make any small speakers, right?
Okay.
But I kind of want to know what you have in order to recommend something that might be at least a reasonable.
We don't want to find out that you have like clips up front, and then we're suggesting something else. Even though this close to where you're seated shouldn't be a problem, but. You like, well, I have Golden Ear, I have B&W.
But if it's any of those, they have very reasonably sized bookshelf speakers or even satellite speakers in their lineup. So I would certainly match to what you have. That's the easiest solution. If it's something like JTR where they only have gigantic speakers, well, then you have insanely efficient speakers, and you'll have to match it with something like a Klipsch. You'll want something that's also insanely efficient if that's what you already have. If you just want something that's a super safe, gonna play very nicely with just about any reasonable speaker, like some SVS Prime bookshelves or Prime satellites, you really can't go wrong with those. With just
NHT Super Zeros would be, I mean, if you're looking for very small, those are pretty. If you're looking for very small, then you could definitely do the Satanic Cross thing. You could definitely do those. You know what I'm thinking would be cool if you do a regular cross, and then you put like wires hanging down on little platforms, right? And then it becomes like the Justice thing. Back and forth, and then you can that's right, and then you could hook some sort of D-box thing up to it, right? So that one speaker goes up when it's supposed to go up, and one speaker goes. That would be awesome.
Speaker stands.
So I was watching a show. It's like a architectural digest, like YouTube channel that they're showing on Hulu. And it's all about these insanely expensive homes for sale in like Beverly Hills and the Hamptons and, all these other places, Las Vegas. And they're showing every single one has got a movie theater. I'm like, I got a movie theater. What do you want? What you got? What you got better than what I got? And the one guy sitting there, he's like, man, this is the state of the art, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, we've got these seats and And they even like react to the movie. They like move around. I'm like, you've got deep box seats.
Yep.
He goes, I don't know what they're called. I'm like, oh, come on.
I bet he also has a whole bunch of speakers in his ceiling, including his front speakers.
I'm sure he does. Yes. You never see a speaker in these
Nope.
places. It's very, very sad. Levi heard about us from the HT guys, R and Braden, and he's been listening to AVRant ever since. Yeah,
Hooray.
we like the HT guys.
Mm-hmm.
Levi recently rearranged his living room, which included moving the location of a subwoofer, so he figured he should rerun his auto setup with his Marantz SR7010, but he has no idea where he put the Audyssey microphone. Amazon accessories for less are both sold out, with no indication of when they'll get more in stock, and eBay listings vary from about $40 up to about $60 and some $60. Mike, that mic's like
It's eBay.
Like, it's like 25 cents tops. He isn't keen to spend that much, especially since he just knows he'll end up finding the darn thing right after spending money on a replacement. So does it have to be a genuine Audyssey mic, or will any decent mic work and allow him to rerun, or at least to run his auto setup? I can't believe you can't just call Denon or Marantz or Audyssey or somebody's got to have them. I mean, they got to have them.
You can.
B-stock or
except
something?
that directly from them, they ask for $75.
Are you kidding me?
I'm not kidding you. At least that's what it was a couple of years ago.
You could go to accessories for less, buy a new receiver, and just throw the receiver away and keep the mic.
That's still going to be more than that. But so I mean, the microphone that you want for the model of receiver that you have for the past, let's see, ever since I better not say the date because I might have it wrong, but for the past number of years, they've all used the same microphone. It is the ACM1H. There is both a white version, so it'll have a W at the end, or a black version that'll have a B at the end, but it's the ACM1H. There did used to be a model of microphone called the ACM1, and you don't want that for receiver as recent as the SR7010. You want the ACM1H. Now, Audyssey has answered this question directly. You do need to get an Audyssey microphone because it is not the world's most accurate microphone, but they have built in compensation for the known inaccuracies of their microphone into their AV receivers. So if you actually use a objectively much more accurate microphone, you won't get accurate results because there is a compensation table built into the AV receiver that is applied no matter what microphone you are connecting. So you need to have the known inaccuracies of the Audyssey microphone and the correct model, which again is the ACM1H in your case. So you absolutely can get them off eBay. The cheapest one I saw was $35. That's better than the $75 of getting it directly from Marantz. So I don't have a better solution than that, but you don't want to just connect any random microphone.
I mean, I would go to like forums and stuff, and you know, just literally,
because plenty of people have bought more than one Denon or Marantz.
Well, not only that, I mean, if you came to my house, and if you came to my house, I would make you go away. But if I invited you, if you said, "Hey, I need to borrow an Audyssey mic. Can I borrow yours for like a day or a couple of hours?" I'm like, "Yeah, fine. You know, here, you know, I'm going to give it to you in a bag. You give it back to me in a bag, and then that'll be fine." You know, I mean, I touch it like once every couple of years. Mm-hmm. That's something I'm worried about getting the COVID from. So, yeah, I mean, certainly you can borrow one from somebody. There's got to be somebody around. Go down to you want to get real cheap? Go to Best Buy, buy a receiver, use the mic, take the receiver back.
Yeah, it's true. True.
You know, and if you want to get real cheap, I mean, if you're like, oh, I don't want to be like that, I don't want to be that guy, go to their open box section. Just say, does it have the Audyssey mic with it? Yeah. Can I return it if I don't like it? Yeah. I will be back in an hour.
There you go.
Why don't you keep the receiver? I'm just taking the mic. That's what I would do. Dazz would like a recommendation for a Bluetooth speaker. Hey, there's some dudes who built their own on this channel. It's like $180. Ask them. He wants to be able to take it out to his patio, so battery power would be best. Water resistance would be a plus, but that's super important. He wants good audio quality. Good luck with that last one. The other key thing that he wants is to be able to sync it up with his Onkyo TXNR 646 receiver so that the same music can be playing inside and out on the patio at the same time. So what do we recommend? What does Onkyo have wireless connectivity-wise? Does it do Bluetooth?
So not Bluetooth output. The
Okay,
TX
yeah.
NR646 can take a Bluetooth input, but it won't output a Bluetooth signal. So that connection thing is something that does need to be addressed, and because there aren't a lot of devices, like if he was playing the music off his phone, there aren't a lot that will send it to two Bluetooth speakers at the same time. You have to choose one or the other. And it is a possibility to do that with some forms of Bluetooth, but most don't do that, where they'll send it to two Bluetooth devices at once. So, assuming that whatever you're inputting into the Onkyo, you're okay outputting of the Zone 2, because it does have Zone 2 pre-outs, you could send the Zone 2 pre-outs into a little Bluetooth transmitter. And now that will send whatever is playing on your Onkyo. You set the Zone 2 to the same source as what the Onkyo is playing, and now it'll come out of your Bluetooth transmitter. I do like the ones from AVRant. There is their Audycast, which is not expensive, and it is rock solid, and it will actually send the signal to two Bluetooth devices if you want to. But yeah, it just has an auxiliary input and an optical input, so the Zone 2 output can plug right into the AVRant Audycast and send your Bluetooth signal. So then, what Bluetooth speaker? That's the only question now. What do you got, Tom?
Oh, okay. So good sound. I mean, good sound is the hard bit. So he didn't give us a budget.
No.
Did he give us a budget?
He did not give us a budget. I don't know what the budget
is. But he wants to be able to transport it around. So
with a battery
I
idea.
can never remember. What were the really high end Bluetooth setup I reviewed a while back? Was it Thiel? It wasn't Thiel, was it?
I don't remember that. The only one, really high-end one I remember was like the BenQ electrostatic one that was crazy.
No, it was bigger than that. Oh, crap. I might have to leave and go look for it. But you talk for a second, and I'll let you know.
The ones I'm recommending these days, if you're willing to spend $400, I can get behind the Sonos Move. The Sonos Move has a very nice battery life. It comes with a little ring that you sit it on to recharge it, and it does actually accept a Bluetooth signal. So if you want to kind of get into Sonos, this is a way to do that. But you can also just use it as a Bluetooth speaker. It's very rugged. It is, I think it's IP57 rated, so it's water resistant. If it just gets splashed with something, not going to be a problem. And nice long battery life, but it is $400. So a less expensive alternative, in fact, half the price, is Ultimate Ears, their Mega Boom 3. Which has a pretty decent sound quality. It's pretty nice for being out on a patio. It actually has a 20-hour battery life, so it's even longer than the Sonos Move, and extremely rugged. Yeah, this is like IP67 rated, so you can literally drop it into a pool for about half an hour, and it's still fine. I quite like that Mega Boom 3. I think that's a good choice for a Bluetooth speaker. I don't know if Tom's found what he's looking for yet.
I haven't. It's but it won't do the thing it's supposed to do. It's supposed to give me a bunch of entries, and it hasn't done it yet. So, give me a second. I'm going back in. It's being weird. How come it won't search like it's supposed to?
That I can't tell you.
Just hold on a second, Rob. Vamp. I'll be right back.
Well, I'm not sure. Maybe I don't really know if I want to move on to the next question, because then we'll have to... You know what? It's fine to double back. People will understand what's going on. So let's start into Eddy, who's actually over in Barcelona. So Eddy was referred to us by someone on Reddit. He's only had the chance to listen to a few episodes of AVRant so far, but he says he's really enjoying our explanations, so he hopes we might be able to help him out, and I think we will. He just bought a 55-inch LG C10 or CX OLED and an NVIDIA Shield TV Pro. So for audio, he has an old 6.1 channel Yamaha AX630 AV receiver. It has 0 HDMI ports and 1 pair of stand-mounted B&W VM1 speakers. So his room is...
It was Thiel. I was right.
Well, we'll add that back into Dazz's question. I've started it on Eddy. Eddy's room is approximately 4 meters by 8 meters, or about 13 feet by 26 feet, and his home theater is taking up the right half of that total space. So I'll send it over to Tom. These renders that I'm going to be showing on YouTube, these are renders. It looks like a real room at first glance, but no, they're renders that were made by his girlfriend. So that's pretty awesome. These look really good. But yeah, it's just pretty much a rectangle going on there with the theater taking up half of the room. So it's width-wise is the total room.
All right. I'm going back to Dazz for a second.
All right.
So Thiel was it's this company I don't normally recommend because I think that they're mostly overpriced garbage for their speakers or whatever. It's just really, really expensive. But their Aurora Bluetooth speakers are pretty phenomenal. They are, as you would expect from an audiophile brand, they are, well built. They are pretty. They are heavy. And they're a little quirky, don't always make sense. Like, I've never had problems with volume changing as much as I've had with these things. Like, it's like every time the power flicks, it's like I have to reset up the volume on them. But there's a smaller version and a bigger version. They're very expensive. But they both sound really good.
Okay.
They have very good overall sound quality. I'm very pleased with both of them. I've been using them both for a long time, and they seem to be rock solid. So the other one that the Creative iRoar is a very good quality one that I would have no problem standing behind.
Right.
So Eddy's in Barcelona. There's something he asked, and there's some pictures. Okay. So he's looking to upgrade his sound system and try some new speakers. Rob, did you see me come back into the room? You didn't see me come back in the room because you were reading,
I did.
right?
Well, I kind of out of the corner of my eye. Sure.
Did you see me try to put my headphones on and slip, and then the headphones smacked me in the nose?
I didn't see the smack in the nose. I just saw you struggling with them a bit.
Yes. It was very graceful. I'm very impressed with myself, and I'm also like feeling like I'm gonna sneeze any second here, but whatever. Looking to upgrade sound system, try some new speakers. The first shop he went to was unfortunately an unpleasant experience, as the owner just wanted to rant against any products that are made in China and push him way beyond his €1,000 budget that he'll like to stick to. I don't blame you, dude. That's audiophiles. But he found another store with very wide selection of brands, and he gave us a link. Eddy's thinking was that since he is in an apartment, which is solidly built and has decent soundproofing, but it's still an apartment after all, he should forego a subwoofer. He was thinking he would start with a new 3.0 set of speakers, tower and center, and then next year, when hopefully new receiver models offer HDMI 2.1 switching, he could upgrade his receiver then. And after that, he could expand to a full surround sound. What do we think of that plan? I'm not the hugest fan of it, to be honest with you. I mean, it's not bad, but it's okay. It could be better. That's an okay plan. There's no problem with having a subwoofer. You just have to be careful and bake goods for your neighbors on the regular and all of that. First of all, I see no point in getting a 3.0 system. I would get a 2.0 system or a 2.1 system, but I've said it many times on this podcast, and I will say it till the day I die, unless they significantly change things in how receivers process sound. The center channel should be the last speaker you buy, especially if it's just you, Eddy, in this apartment.
Now that
and if it's just you and your girlfriend.
He's got a fairly wide seating area for the spacing of the speakers and television. So if people do sit over to the side, maybe with it, because he already has a 2.0 set up right now. So maybe he's finding that, maybe his favorite seat or his girlfriend's favorite seat is, sort of the L-shaped part of the couch that's way over to the left, and voices do, they aren't anchored to the middle of the screen because that's where somebody is always sitting. I could see that being a possibility.
The width of this couch changes dramatically based on which picture you look
well,
at.
it was a 3D thing, so I just screen captured it, so the geometry is all distorted, but
geometry is a little distorted.
Gives you an idea.
That's
right. Gives you an idea of what the sort of room we're dealing with. And again, this is just a render.
That, but
yeah.
I don't know that if I'm on a budget that I'm going to buy a center channel specifically, even for this purpose. Most people, other than maybe yourself, Eddy, don't care. I mean, I just was ranting against my friend who didn't even hook up his nice speakers to his nice receiver because he couldn't be chuffed to reinsert some speaker wire. I mean, the problem was, I rewired everything. The problem was obvious. In the back of his receiver, one wasn't connected. It was just kind of like hanging out back there.
Now, more than all of the center channel stuff, I want to get into this notion of I'm in an apartment. I don't want to bother my neighbors with bass, so I'm going to forego a subwoofer. That's not how bass works. You are quite possibly more likely to bother your neighbors with the bass that comes out of just a pair of tower speakers because you don't have much choice in the location of where your front left and right speakers go. They need to go where front left and right speakers go so that, sounds come out of the appropriate locations for front left and right speakers. And you are going to be sitting where you're going to be sitting in this setup. It's not like you have a tremendous amount of leeway of where furniture goes in this room size. So you're at the mercy of the acoustics of your room and the positioning of your speakers and couch as to how the bass is going to sound in your room. And you might be sitting in your favorite seat with your speakers positioned correctly, and you're like, I'm just not getting enough bass, so you turn it up, or you ran your auto setup and it boosted the bass output because that's the response that you're getting at your seats. And you end up with this huge, overwhelming hump of bass in some other location of room that causes a resonance, and that gets down to your neighbors, all sorts of bad things. Whereas if you have a subwoofer dedicated to producing the bass in your room, you can do a subwoofer crawl, which is where you put the subwoofer in your favorite seat, and then you take yourself around the room while a bass sweep is playing on repeat out of the subwoofer. You take yourself around the room to all the places where the subwoofer could conceivably go, which thankfully, not being a left or right speaker, you've got choices of where it could go in your room, and you find the best location of subwoofer to seat. Now you switch places, the subwoofer goes in that spot, you go back in your seat, and now you actually have better bass response that doesn't require a potential big hump or resonance, and you're less likely to bother your neighbors that way. Also, make sure that you decouple your subwoofer from the floor. It looks like you have hard surface floors in here. Make sure you have something that decouples the subwoofer, something squishy, not so squishy that it gets compressed, but squishy enough that it acts as a spring below your subwoofer so that you don't get mechanical vibration transmitting energy into the floor. So I'm really in favor. I agree with Tom's. If this is a matter of price and you can either get 3.0 or 2.1, get 2.1. That's the better place to start, and I really want to encourage you to have a subwoofer in your setup because that's actually going to bother your neighbors less. So SVS is available from the store that you linked to. It's they also have Velodyne and they also have Klipsch. So I mean, they have JL Audio as well, but I really expect that'll be much more expensive than you're wanting to pay. So those are three good brands to get a reasonable subwoofer from, three that are available from the store that you're going to be shopping at. So check out some SVS.
And I'm looking at the tower speakers that because he shows a render with tower speakers.
It's not that's a render. 1,000. Yeah, no, the B&Ws that he has are not those.
Yeah, I'm looking at this render and I'm thinking, okay, so what does this guy have to spend as far as what does he really have to spend on speakers here? And I don't know what the price of the SVSs are as far as their because over in Spain it could be a substantially different it's showing
price.
It's showing prices on this website.
Okay.
If you click on it, so like from a tower speaker, I'm just looking at the tower speakers here, and I kind of click on a couple of brands I know and like SVS. They sell those there. They sell the prime towers. Sure. Those are just over, I think they're just about 1,100 euro.
Okay.
Boston Acoustics, the A250s are 600 euros.
Yep. But those are towers, right?
Those are towers, right. We could do a lot cheaper than that, too. But I can't get to the subwoofer page because I can't get it to translate again. Okay. I don't know what subwoofer is in Spanish.
Well, I mean, coming up in his next question, he's asking with his budget what speakers should he audition, because over on Reddit and just going by some physical sizes and looks and that, he was kind of leaning towards the Polk Signature series, which honestly, I don't mind those, but I definitely want you, since you have a store that you say you can go audition speakers at, I definitely want you to, because they wouldn't be my first choice. I don't have a big problem with the new Polk Signature series, but they wouldn't be my first choice, and they've got a whole bunch of brands available that are speakers I would typically recommend more highly. One I definitely want you to pay attention to is Q Acoustics. They haven't been available in North America that long, but they've been available. They're a UK brand, so they've been available throughout Europe for much longer. Q Acoustics, as far as a value for a very nice neutral with a slightly UK sound. It's got a little bit of that British tuning, but you're coming from B&W, so I'm almost like, I bet you'll kind of, the little bit of familiarity, but slight more leaning towards neutrality that Q Acoustics does. I'm like, I bet it'd be right up your alley, and price-wise, it fits really, really well. But we've already mentioned SVS. They also have Focal, PSB, and Dyne Audio, all of which I can easily recommend, but prices might make it such. I think the Q Acoustics slide in really nicely on all fronts.
The Q Acoustics are not that expensive.
That's right.
The Focals that they have on their website they all start at like €1,700.
Oh, it's the higher end ones. Okay.
Yeah, it's the higher end stuff. So they did have Klipsch as well. The Klipsch, they had some decent offerings there. I don't know that I love Klipsch in a highly reflective room like it looks like you might be having.
But for an audition, it's certainly worth a try. Also, if you want something really different just to audition it, it's always fun to listen to some Martin Logan electrostatics and some Magnaplanar speakers, which they offer at this store. So that's probably more for fun. They're probably out of your price range and probably not appropriate in size anyway, but just to listen to, it's really fun. But I would get some bookshelves. I would get some bookshelves and a subwoofer.
Yeah, I would definitely consider that too. Tower speakers, I think you're gonna. This room does not look massive.
No, it's
you certainly don't need all this the tower speakers and.
No, I mean he was.
I would also
he was
try
thinking
to find
no subwoofers, so he wanted the towers.
Yeah.
But I want to get you away from that line of thinking.
Yeah. I would also consider trying to find a Dolly dealer to see, because that's a European brand that I like quite a bit. And their bookshelf speakers, I find them to be of pretty high value. Mm-hmm. Now, they have a wide range of speakers, and I don't know what they are price-wise for you. But I would try to take a listen to those as well while you're over there. I was looking at the Q Acoustics as well.
Yeah.
I think price-wise, they do something.
I would probably kind of lean towards those.
Yeah. Even the towers, I think you could probably get away with towers. But again, we're going to want you to cross them over at 80 hertz anyway. So you might as well just get the bookshelves and call it a day. Matt asks, is it really so much to ask for a single device that can play all of the streaming services in the highest audio and video quality? Apparently, it is. Yep. It is impossible to ask for such a thing.
Believe me, if I could find it, I'd be all over it in a heartbeat.
Because from what we can tell, Google, Apple, Amazon, and all of the others are like middle school kids. Vindictive, petty, and prone to hissy fits. And that is why we can't have nice things. So yes. Yes.
It is too much to ask. Apparently.
It is too much to ask. Like, why is there no Twitch on the Roku?
Yeah.
I don't know. It makes literally no sense. But there it is. So after unsuccessfully trying to get HDMI ARC to work without any dropouts on the Sony X900F and the Marantz SR7010 receiver, he's come to the conclusion that even if it worked properly, he still wouldn't love it. Using ARC means no on-screen display from Ms. Marantz, so he can't even check the info screen to make sure everything is playing in the desired format, and which is something my wife loves when I do. And the Android TV platform on his Sony TV doesn't support the highest audio and video quality from every streaming service anyway. So he has his Amazon Fire Stick 4K, no audio dropouts with that, and it almost does everything he wants as far as streaming services, but not quite. He mostly uses Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, Disney Plus, YouTube, and Hulu. Add Twitch to that, and you're me, sir. He is also considering switching from cable to Hulu Plus and live TV. That quickly spirals into as much as you're paying for cable, so just be careful when you go down that road. I had a friend who did that, and he's like, oh, I want to watch sports, and then he added the sports package. Oh, I want to watch Game of Thrones, and I asked him how much he was paying. It's like, I was like, dude, that's not how much you were paying for cable. He's like, oh yeah. Now he's down to, I think he's just Hulu. He went back to just straight Hulu. So the Fire TV Stick 4K cannot do YouTube in 4K. Not ideal, but he can live with that. But for some crazy reason, it's not great for Netflix by default. That's not a crazy reason. I'm sure it's for a very real, very petty, very, you can't play with this, boy. You can't sit with us. You're not allowed. We don't like you. That's what they sound like. By default, it sends everything from Netflix out at 1080p. HDR and Dolby Vision can actually still work, but the resolution is automatically stuck at 1080p somehow. You can force the Fire Stick to output 4K, but only at 60 frames per second. And then all the other apps are stuck that way too, unless you manually switch them back. So that's frustrating. And then there's the matter of HBO Max and Peacock not being on the Fire TV platform at all. That isn't a big deal to Matt yet. But it's still an annoyance that if he ever does want them, he'll definitely need an additional streaming device. I'm going to give you a hard time, sir, for a second. I want you to know it comes from a place of love. Is it not the ultimate sign of privilege that we can be annoyed by things that we don't have access to, that we don't even want? Is that not like the sign
at the end?
The sign that we are like, I don't want it, but I want to be able to want it if I wanted to want it, but I don't want it. But the fact that they don't want to give it to me is dumb. You're dumb. Sorry. Apparently, I am channeling my children today. I haven't had a chance to talk to a lot of people recently because of the whole people in my house, and I'm wearing a mask all the time, so it's very uncomfortable and everything. So, yeah. All right. So we looked at Roku, no Dolby Vision support at all, and it's hit or miss from service to service as far as supporting the highest quality. NVIDIA Shield TV doesn't do 4K from Hulu, and Hulu Plus Live TV is limited to 720p. Apple TV 4K doesn't do 5.1 audio from Hulu. So he appreciates how this is definitely a first world problem. That's what I said, but meaner. But it almost feels as if upgrading to a 4K HDR display has mostly led to frustration. Is there one device that can do it all? There is not. But
nope.
let me tell you something that that many people have told many people over time that has helped all of them. Lower your standards. Okay? Learn to settle. Learn to realize that sometimes you just can't have it all. And sometimes maybe you don't even deserve it. Have you ever thought of that? Maybe the problem isn't the Apple Fire TV 4K Chromecast coup. It's you. You're the problem.
I'm in the same boat. I wish. So, I mean, since I'm in Canada, I don't even have Hulu. So that one doesn't end up affecting me.
Storm United States. You got to go with your AK-47 to the Capitol and tell them to give you 4K Hulu.
Most of the content that is from the services I can't get is available through Crave, and Crave doesn't do 4K or HDR or 5.1 audio. It's 1080p and 2.0 audio. That's what Crave is, but that's how all the HBO content is available to me. No, I mean, I'm in the same boat.
What's it like living in the third world country?
Pretty much. I would absolutely love it if there were one device I could count on to give the best quality from all the services, but it just doesn't exist. And it's this crazy hodgepodge. Like, the only external devices that do YouTube in 4K and HDR are the Chromecast Ultra and the PlayStation 4 Pro. That's it. But then the PlayStation...
So specific. You're like, why? Why those two?
But like the PlayStation 4 Pro doesn't do Atmos from anything, so you wouldn't want to use that as your one box solution. The Chromecast Ultra, it doesn't do Dolby Vision of any kind. So since he wants Dolby Vision from services as well, no, can't get it from that. So that doesn't work. Hulu is best on the Amazon Fire TV 4K, which you already have. It's all of those versions, whether it's the stick or the cube or the regular Amazon Fire TV 4K. Hulu is great on that. It's also very good on the Xbox One S or Xbox One X. Now, I mean, I'm almost looking at like Xbox One S or X. Is that possibly the best choice for covering?
Bite your tongue, forked devil.
Well, I mean, the problem is that...
How could it possibly be?
Well, I mean, the problem is that if you want Atmos, then it always says Atmos, no matter what the original was. It's hard to tell what the original stream really was, because your front of your AV receiver will always say Atmos, and then you're relying on the...
talk about driving somebody like this crazy. Have it always say Atmos all the time.
Relying on the built-in upmixing, which seems to be... Seems to be pretty hit or miss. That
your Lord
built-in.
and Savior Bill Gates making sure that your audio is doing the right thing. Like I put my faith in Bill Gates because that's gonna work out.
So I mean, Apple TV 4K in general. I mean, Disney Plus, Netflix does a fantastic job with those. But then, like you said, Hulu doesn't support 5.1 audio, and he's a big time Hulu user. And then for YouTube, they said 4K support is coming to YouTube on the Apple TV 4K with iOS or tvOS 14 when that comes out, but no mention of HDR. So don't really know about that. And then, what was the other service that was mentioned in there? Whatever it
Peacock.
is, live TV. Oh, Amazon Prime Video. The Apple TV 4K is not the best Amazon Prime Video box. So there, where again, the Amazon Fire TV 4K is very good for that. So, I mean, if you truly want the best possible formats from each individual service, you kind of end up with, I think, 3 different streaming devices. I think you end up with an Apple TV 4K, an Amazon Fire TV 4K, and a Chromecast Ultra. Because, I mean, strangely, the NVIDIA Shield TV is not the best device for, it's not the best device for YouTube, even though it's Android. It's not the best device for Hulu. So that's 2 out of the 3 that you wanted.
Right.
Yeah, there's no fantastic.
Or you just settle. You just go,
You kind of go, your Fire TV 4K is close. It's close.
Yeah. I know. I'm with you, man. I'm with you. But you know what I hate more than not getting the best possible audio and video? Having to switch devices when the streaming service is on the device I'm currently using.
Yeah.
I'd rather not have to switch devices. I happen to switch apps. I want this is what we need. We need a somebody to shove down everybody's throats a interface, or not necessarily app, but like a codec that everyone has to use that supports 5.1 HDR, blah, 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 the whole thing. And everybody has to encode it in the same way, and that's what has to happen. And then there's one player that just grabs it from everybody, and either you have access to it or you don't based on what subscriptions you have. And that will happen exactly never. So here we are.
That is definitely a never.
I mean, if you want to complain about it, then think about when you had cable TV. Was it always in 5.1 high definition? No. It never, there were shows that they did upconvert, there were shows that they didn't upconvert. There were channels that you could get in high definition, channels you couldn't. Hey man, I watched PBR for like a year because it was the best high definition stuff I could find at the time. I feel your pain, but it was never perfect. It was never always the best that it could be, and it's always going to be that way. So try watching Buffy on Hulu. And you want to talk about terrible picture quality. My son's like, what's happening? I'm like, I don't know. It's real dark. That's all I can tell you. She's fighting in the dark and it's pixelated.
The first season was super low quality film.
Oh, yeah.
That's all they could afford. And it was still film at the time.
Yeah. So we're on the season 2. Bobby. After a lot of research, Bobby has decided against building a boss. Well, we tried that, building the girlfriends. It doesn't work. I don't think building a boss is going to be any better. Oh, I'm sorry. A boss is a baffle open sub shaker platform for his seats. He's undecided as to whether he will go for butt kicker tactile transducers. He's come across some horror stories from them bottoming out. If we are wondering why he wants so much tactile bass, he is indeed coming from the car audio world. Always, man. And along those lines, he had a couple of truck boxes with Scar audio subwoofer drivers in them that he was no longer using. So he brought those into his theater, connected them to his Crown XLS amplifier, and put them a couple inches behind his seats. It's still not as strong as his car audio experience, so he isn't satisfied with that. These particular boxes are less than 3/4 of a cubic feet. 7.75 cubic feet, and the Scar audio drivers are shallow mount. They are not the most powerful, so he's wondering, would getting a couple of larger drivers and building larger boxes for them deliver the kind of tactile bass he is looking for, or do we think butt kickers are the way to go? What do we say about those bottoming out concerns? His pair of SVS PP1000 subs sound good, but they don't deliver car audio sound tactile bass. He's aware he's going to need something like a mini DSP to have tactile transducers and the PB1000s both working together, but he doesn't have a mini DSP yet, so what do we advise?
So, I've got a strong feeling on this, but...
All right, well, I'm sure you do. Let me hear your strong feeling, and I'll tell you what my strong feeling is once I decide what it is.
I think for what he's describing, pretty much the only way to go is to go butt kicker, but not the butt kicker minis. I don't think you're going to be satisfied with the butt kicker minis. I think you want the full-sized butt kicker LFE, which was the original one that they made, but I think you want the full-sized thing. And the issues of them bottoming out, so I mean, it's literally just like a piece of metal cylinder that is suspended in a magnetic field, and that is being jostled back and forth, and it is possible to bottom the thing out. The reason that happens is because people split the subwoofer output from their AV receiver, so the signal is still being sent to the regular subwoofer and to the amplifier that is powering the butt kicker LFE. That is what people do. They Y-split it, and that signal has been equalized with cuts and boosts that are appropriate for your actual subwoofer that is making audible sound. You do not want an equalized signal being sent to the butt kicker. The butt kicker should be getting a linear, low frequency signal being sent to it with no equalization applied to it. You absolutely do not want that. Also, some people make the mistake of, I want bass that goes all the way down to single digits, and a butt kicker LFE is not designed for it to go down to single digits. It can go down to about 12 legitimately, but I would highly encourage putting like a 15 hertz shelf on the bottom of the thing, because when you try to get it to start playing 10, 9, 8 hertz, you run into issues where it could bottom out. So that's why you definitely do need the mini DSP in between to either counteract, because if you're going to still use regular room correction, you have to counteract it, or if you're using like the Audyssey editor app, you actually just want to not apply equalization to the bass and then manually apply the equalization to your actual subwoofer. That's the other way to come at it.
Right. I would be suspect about adding any sound below 20 hertz to the butt kickers. I mean, I know that they're usually the below 20 hertz stuff is harmonics anyways, or
it would be fundamentals.
There's harmonics above it. Yeah. It'd be harmonics above it, but that you would be hearing. But what I would not want to happen is have my subwoofers maybe sort of making a noise that you can't physically hear, but that's supposed to be kind of shaking, or kind of, it's inaudible, but you can kind of feel the pressure on your ears, and then to have your chair start to shake.
Well, I mean, the thing is,
I feel like
the tactile bass he's used to from car audio, that's the 40 hertz stuff. That's
that you see exactly
the 30 to 55 hertz range. That's the like literally kick you in the back type of bass that he's used to from car audio. It's much higher than that.
Yeah. I would. So what, Rob? I believe that regardless of what direction you decide to go, I really don't think that you're going to be happy unless physically the thing that you are touching is moving along with you. Okay, so there's a couple of ways to do it. You could take your subwoofers, you can put them on your platform, you could like nail them down, and when the subwoofers start going, the platform's going to start doing what's going to start shaking your chair, and everything's going to shake. Or you can take the drivers that you have, and if you put them in boxes, then nail the boxes to the platform that your chair is on, and then it shakes the chair. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
No matter what, something needs to shake something,
yes,
because that's actually
move it. Yes.
That's what you're used to.
Yeah.
So I don't think you're going to be happy with having a subwoofer put out a whole bunch of sound near you, because I don't think that's what you want. What you want is the actual physical vibrations, which butt kickers are designed to give you.
Absolutely.
Now, I mean, if you're like,
without
I don't want
messing up the sound from your SVS subs.
Right. So you're trying to get the shaking without adding more sound, because you don't want the sound in the room, because you've already got your SVS subs to play the proper sound. So you're just looking for that vibration. If you were to hook the the drivers up near you, or even attach them in ways I've seen, or just take them out of the box and put them inside the chair you're on and like strap them to it.
Which is a little bit similar to what the Boss platform is. But the issue is when you're using a driver, like the reason he ended up going away from the Boss platform is because people started using words like subtle. And he's like, that's the last thing I want is subtle.
Right.
Because it's there.
Buy a D-box seat, man.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Solve this whole problem right there.
But the Boss
like
Boss platform is there to give you the sensation of fully pressurized bass without actually having to fully pressurize a room. Like if you're in a room where you can't because it's 10,000 cubic feet, it can give you that physical sensation, but it is a subtle sensation. Because otherwise you would just be moving a tremendous amount of air, which is sound. It doesn't matter if the baffle is open. So when things like subtle came into the description, he's like, that's the last thing I want. I want to be kicked in my back like I am in my car. So yeah, I mean, and when you're talking about like the butt kicker minis, which these days are the much more popular ones, I don't think it's going to give you the full on car audio experience that you're after. I think you want the full sized.
Yes, I agree. How much time? Okay. How long have we gone? Actually,
right around 2 hours.
Oh, 2 hours. Okay, let's stop. Who we got left, Rob?
We have Rob M, Tim C. Got to scroll down a ways because there's a few questions there. Will T and Fred R. I believe that is it. Yes.
I will apologize because the reason we didn't answer as many questions is because I was.
There was a lot of tangents tonight.
There was a lot of tangents tonight. Tom was looking for some human contact, and Rob was it for the last couple of days.
While everyone listened in.
My wife started her new job, so I don't see her anymore. She's been working from home for the last couple of months, and now suddenly she's not.
You're telling me your kids don't provide suitable conversation for an adult mind?
No, weird, right? But on top of that, when we have people in the house, I have the kids banished to their rooms, and everybody sits in their room with their door closed, with a mask on, in their rooms, door closed, and reading or doing computer stuff or whatever, but mostly reading. So yeah, there's not a lot of that. All right, we want to thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank Levi for going to avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link. Sending us a PayPal donation, as well as our 125 or 100 and whatever I said before, patrons over at patreon.com, including James W., Brandon, and Rob. So thank you guys.
Indeed. Levi, thank you very much for that PayPal donation. It's very much appreciated. And James, Brandon, and Rob, thank you for being amongst our 125 patrons over at patreon.com/AVRant Podcast if you would like to sign up for an automatic monthly donation.
I want to thank those notes of gratitude from James, Brendan, Levi, Tim, and Fred.
Indeed. It's very nice to receive those. It does encourage us to keep this thing going. So thank you very much, James, Brandon, Levi, Tim, and Fred. We do appreciate those messages, and we very much appreciate everyone who continues to listen to AVRant and send in questions, because it is a nice distraction to have, and there is no better time to have a kick-in home theater than right now. Because, hey, movies apparently are going to start coming out just 3 weeks, not even 3 weeks after they're in theaters.
I'm telling you. I'm telling you, this podcast is gonna blow.
Get ready now.
We've been positioned perfectly.
Right. We've been
700 episodes in a row.
Game.
Just playing the long game.
11,
That's
12
right.
years, we knew it was going to happen.
One of those hustle situations.
That's right, Matt.
We're ready. We're gonna explode. We're gonna be on the radio talking to people. How did you guys know that we would need you so bad? Oh, well, we just knew.
That's right.
You guys came out of nowhere. Yeah, 700 episodes. We came out of nowhere. Shut up, Terry Gross. All right. For AVRant, I'm Tom Andrew.
And I'm Rob H. Now stay in and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.